It's really challenging. It's
Sure.
really challenging. And you need to, it's my personal opinion, obviously, but I think it is to everyone's benefit if the person who is entering into working with performing artists has had some time to develop like pattern recognition and like really efficient manual skills and clinical reasoning skills, because you're often the first point of medical contact if you're like with someone backstage, and you need to be prepared to make some really challenging conversations and get your emotions like kind of out of the picture, right? So I think that I know we like it, people who want to work with performing arts, I like really want to work with performing arts, but I would say like give yourself a beat and like go get some reps in. Maybe like study for your OCS for a hot sec, you know, because I mean for me that really helped like bring a lot of things together.
This episode is brought to you by PT Pintcast Media. If you've ever thought about launching a podcast to grow your brand, your clinic, your business, your YouTube channel, we can help. Drop me an email, jimmy@ptpintcast.com, and we'll get you on the way. Now today, imagine your job required a flawless squat, a standing backflip, and emotional vulnerability 8 times a week. Imagine doing that after already spending your day in rehearsal or teaching or auditioning for your next role. It's not just performance, it's performance under pressure, on repeat, with zero margin for error. Now imagine the healthcare system supporting these artists was more reaction than proactive, if it exists at all. Today's guest is working to change all that. She's a clinician, speaker, parent, and the owner of a New York City-based PT practice that's redefining how performing artists recover, recondition, and return to work stronger than ever. Let's welcome Marissa Schaefer of FlySpace. So I want to set the stage.
Yeah.
What I did there?
Did it. Yep.
What does and I know you're gonna say there is none, but what does a normal week look like for a performing artist, for the people you get to treat? Because I've heard 8 shows a week and you know, like how crazy things for be. And I know you work with a varied group, but like what's as close to normal as you can describe as possible for someone like this?
Okay, let's start with like a Broadway performer, shall we? And then maybe maybe if we have a second, we can venture into modern dance territory. I'm in New York City though, so let's like set context there because it's going to look different if you're somewhere else, okay?
Everywhere, right.
So Broadway performer, you have 8 shows a week, right? Usually that's like one on every day of the week except for Wednesday and Saturday, which we have 2 shows. And then Monday is what we call a dark day, where you get a day to be normal and do your groceries and maybe do your laundry. So during that time, you're always performing at night and then on matinees for Wednesdays and Saturdays. But sometimes you also have rehearsals or put-ins or things of this nature. Rehearsals happening 1, maybe 2 times a week for shows that are open and running. And then on top of that, folks might have other gigs. Might be something like teaching Soul Cycle or being a personal trainer, or it might be participating in a workshop from 10 to 6, Monday through Friday or whatever, which means that you're developing a new production or a new show, which is so much energy output. I feel like people are like, oh, you're a Broadway performer, you just perform at night. Like, no, these people are hustling their tushes off. Yeah. And then like modern dance is also kind of cuckoo bananas, right? I think for smaller dance companies, you know, for a company that has maybe 12 individuals, you're looking at being in the studio and rehearsing for 5 to 7 hours in a day. And if you have a small modern dance company, that means that like everyone is in the room. It's not like cast A is rehearsing and cast B is not there. Like for a small modern dance company, everyone is cast. So everyone has to be in the room and learning and dancing. 5 to 7 hours a day of like rehearsal is a ton, not to mention the travel that definitely happens and the performances that happen. And then juggling that with what we call layoffs. Layoffs are like your contract might only be 32 weeks in a year. And for those 2 to 4 to 6 weeks at a time, you suddenly find yourself with no income and no rehearsal. So how do you manage that and make those ends meet?
Yeah. So there's a lot.
Yeah.
There's a lot. Uh-huh. You've got a hot take about this because it sounds like you obviously have a little bit of a finger on the pulse of this. Mm-hmm. And your hot take is the care system for performers is so reactive. Describe why it is or how that is, and then why does it need to change?
For sure. Okay. Now, I won't say that this is ubiquitous. Like, there's some companies that have what I'm calling a more proactive system, and they've been written up in literature. And I have been, I've had the great pleasure and honor of working with some of them in some of these companies. So, a reactive care system kind of looks like, hey, we need to have physical therapy contractually, or like as a thank you to our performers when we're performing at this particular theater, once a year, twice a year, et cetera, we'll have care come in, but we won't have anything necessarily consistent or adequate enough to attend to all the performers' needs, right? So basically, then little issues will start to kind of come up and potentially fester, and people might try to like self manage and regulate, or the company might try to uh, throw a few resources at it, or it also depends on if the performer is willing to speak up and talk about whether or not they have an injury. And then these things kind of fester, and we don't have adequate care to take care of them, and suddenly they're big issues, right? And when they're a big issue, it's not just the fact that someone has an injury, but now we need to change casting, and we need to do it super quickly. We haven't had a preparation, and maybe we need to bring other folks in to cover that person, which costs money, money to rehearse, money to pay that additional person, money to make additional costumes. And so instead of providing adequate care from the get, in so much as having PT in the space early, having conversations and infrastructures regarding care for each performers and what that looks like, and how we're going to attend to your injuries, so we can all talk about injuries the same way, as opposed to it being taboo and hush hush and the show must go on. I had a brain fart, but anyway,
I feel like the show must go on is a lot like, I mean, the parallel in sports is no pain, no gain, right? Like they're the same thing. They're like, hey, I understand that there's an injury going on, but suck it up, rub some dirt on it, and get out there.
exactly.
And that is really easy to say.
Yeah.
And probably sometimes with some of these artists, not possible or not easy to do or not possible to do. It feels like you're talking about the world of performing artists, but this could be also applied to the world, not just
Yeah.
performing artists or military operators or athletes. Like, this is reactive versus proactive, and when you do that on a population scale, people are happier, they feel
Right.
better longer, things don't pop up when they might have, and things cost less because we have to bring in
Right.
the cost element as well.
Exactly. Right. If you stub your toe, or you start, you walk in the streets of New York and your foot hurts, if you get it seen, taken care of right now, we can probably give you one or two little exercises, maybe some supportive footwear, and you're going to be fine. Versus if you have a 2-week trip planned to New York, after day 3, your foot hurts, I'm just going to ignore it. Right. And then
Right.
by the end of the trip, you're hurting a lot. You have to change all of your plans, and all this money that you've paid for your trip is now kind of lost. Right. You've got to change everything.
Yeah.
And then the care is going to take longer as well.
Yeah.
So you're
There's
not
this there's this phrase, reconditioning. Is
right.
that what the missing link is in performer rehab, that most people, even clinicians maybe, are
Right.
missing?
Yeah, that's a really good point. Yes, I believe we are missing the reconditioning link, and so
So
much
how do
as
you describe what like set the stage? What is reconditioning?
yeah. Okay, so as we established from the beginning, right, being a performer constitutes like being able to do a lot of stuff. You need to have a very high level of conditioning, right, to just get through your day and to be resilient from the get. When folks get injured, what tends to happen is everything falls off. They've gone from like 100 to approximately 0 as we're kind of working through the acute phase. And what I tend to see, and again, this is not a blanket statement, but what I tend to see is that folks start to rehabilitate a particular injury, and they rehabilitate the specific muscles, tendons, tissues, et cetera. And they get to this point, maybe in their mid stage of rehab, where the tissue is better, but then they have such like a decreased level of conditioning, right? Because they spent 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks, right, just making sure that their ADLs or activities of daily living are like okay to go. But then we tend to miss this huge chunk where it's like, well, we don't only need local tissue capacity, we need power, we need strength, we need coordination, we need anaerobic capacity, we need all these kinds of things. And that's where the reconditioning comes in. And that's where we tend to lack. So that when folks come in, they feel better, but they're not ready for the demands of an HO week plus the rehearsals, plus the other gigs that they have on top of that.
So what would the gold standard? You can wave a magic wand and sort of say, this is the gold standard for performer care and the system it would look like. What is that? And then follow up, what's stopping us from doing that?
That's a great question. Well, I will say that, as we established, just like Broadway looks different than modern dance, small, large modern dance companies. I mean, the budget looks different, the involvement looks different. And even in a Broadway show, not all shows are created equal. You could have a 90-minute run with 5 actors who basically stand on stage versus a 2.5-hour show with like high octane dancing and heavy props and all that stuff, right? So I think it would be better to talk about like common pieces as opposed to, one blanket, what it would look like. Cause again, I think it needs some tailoring, but I think we start with this and it is that we need a common language and an infrastructure that we all speak. So I think the biggest paradigm shift is that all parties need to get on the same page. We need to understand what our system is going to look like, what our expectations are. We need to create a common language around how we're going to deal with injury, what kinds of information we're going to share between physical therapy, AT, S&C, and company management, right? So that we can all speak together, because if we all have different ideas about how things are going to go, we can have an awesome system, right? And it's just not going to work. So that's thing one, right? Thing two is then providing adequate care. And it's not just like, okay, cool, we've provided PT and like, or AT or whatever, we've provided backstage care. But if you're like squishing care into 15-minute chunks, which happens quite often, right? You only have 15 minutes to meet with your backstage care provider, or only 30% of the cast can be seen in a week. That's not adequate, right? Because what ends up happening is that the small niggly issues that are happening today are like, oh my gosh, it's totally fine. My ankle's fine, but you have such a big injury. You can't lift your arm. I'm going to give my slot to you. And then that person with the little niggly injury, like waits and waits and waits and waits. And as we discussed before, they have a bigger problem, right? So providing adequate care, which looks like enough slots per people, enough time to kind of get to the root of what's going on. And we can work efficiently. Like it doesn't have to be too much longer than 15 minutes, but and then once someone gets injured or something pops up, if it doesn't get to come into the PT table, can we at least have a conversation where it's like, hey, Joe got hit in the shoulder with this prop yesterday. PT, are you aware of it? PT's like, oh, hey, no, we weren't aware of it. Joe, come in. We just want to triage and make sure things are okay, right? As opposed to waiting. Again, it kind of goes in the same circle. So there's that kind of conversation. And then when someone gets injured, helping to keep an eye on that individual, right? Which could look like, hey, Joe, I know you got hit in the shoulder and you're going to go see our physician who's like on the show with us. We've let the person know what's going on. Do you have the resources you need in PT? Okay, you've gone to PT, outside of the show. Is your PT going well? Do we have the reconditioning piece taken care of? Do you have access to all the resources you need in terms of like, do you need a mental health care provider? Do you need a dietitian? Like, how can we look for all these individuals, after all these individuals' health and well-being? Because as we mentioned before, when we don't have that reconditioning piece figured out and we kind of lose these folks as they go into medical leave, what we see a lot is that folks come back from these medical leaves, and again, local tissue capacity is pretty good, but the rest of them, they need more work. So when they come back, there's also there can be this game of like they're in technically, but then they start calling out a fair amount. By calling out, I mean like they will, instead of doing 8 shows a week, they'll be like, oh, at the second show of this Wednesday, I don't think I have the capacity to do, I'm not ready, which creates another stressful ripple effect as well. So we want to make sure that we're heading that off at the pass before they come back in. So everyone is set up for success, if that makes sense.
All right, if you're still doing all your notes by hand, we need to talk. Aphelis AI Scribe is changing the game. You walk in, you talk to your patient like you normally would, you treat them, and boom, your notes are drafted in real time, thanks to AI. No voice commands, no clicking around. It just listens and writes like a scribe, but smarter. People are cutting their documentation time by 90%. That's not a typo, 90%. That's actual feedback from real clinicians using it now. You want to see it in action? Go to athelas.com and take a test drive. That's ATHELAS.com and say goodbye to after hours charting. So what is everybody in terms of clinic owners, rehab professionals outside of performing arts? What do they need to learn from that model? What could they take away and say, like that's a really good lesson. How could I translate that to what I do if I'm not necessarily like Marissa on Broadway?
You mean like for muggles, like not performing artists?
Yeah, in terms of just like for non-performing artists, like what can they learn like for that? Like I feel like most of our colleagues, let's just say an outpatient physical therapy, right? The broadest of scope. Yeah. They wait for reactivity, right? I don't know who you are until you walk in the door.
Yeah.
You know, maybe the idea is that we flip the script on that. I'm trying to do as many stage and script puns as I can, Marissa. I'm just hoping you're picking up on.
Yeah, you totally.
What are some lessons that someone listening who's like, hey, listen, this is interesting. I'm not in performing arts, but I can take something from this. I feel like that reactivity thing is everywhere.
Yeah, the reactivity thing is everywhere. I mean, I kind of come back to like education, right? I think the other thing that we're learning in, we work within a dance school. My clinic works within a dance school. And we found that we put a system in place, but people didn't necessarily know how to use it, right? So we can tout that we are proactive, but if people, again, don't understand the language or don't have the skills to then navigate it, like, pff. So with this school, and I think that this can work for like regular outpatient ortho or folks who are not performing artists, like we have workshops where we're kind of like giving folks like a 10-minute video to learn from before they come into the space. And then we talk about things like, how are you going to manage your load over the summer? Like, so that you're prepared to come back. How are you going to manage your load? This could be, I'm just giving an example. Like, how could you manage your load leading up to a marathon so that you don't need us so much at the end, right? Kind of prehab, if you will, which I know a lot of people use that word, like rehabilitation, education tools. And then like we also have a very robust list of individuals that we cross-refer to. And I'm not just thinking like other PTs. I mean, we have a healthy list of mental health practitioners, dietitians, all that kind of thing, because we need to make sure that folks know that something might not just be strictly a musculoskeletal issue, right? There could be a mental health component that's getting in the way of them getting to where they need to go.
Sure. You do a lot of things, wear a lot of hats, a couple different costume changes for you.
Thank you.
Clinician, business owner, parent, how do you focus on balancing this while also pushing for change in your field? I think it's easy for people to jump into Facebook groups. I talk about that a lot and sort of yell at clouds and say this sucks. But you go out of your way to build. You've gone out of your way to build something that can be the vehicle for change.
Right.
Like I want to make sure I gave you a nod to that and say like, what are some things that you learned doing that? Because it probably wasn't easy.
No, and I don't think past tense is correct either, because it's still not easy, and I don't expect it to be forever, I think. How do I balance it? I don't know what balance means, but I'm trying very hard. Listen, like, I think it's important to note that everything that I'm involved in makes me very passionate and excited and happy. And so that makes getting everything done. Again, balance, I don't think is an appropriate word when we're talking about me, but it makes managing all things much easier. And it brings me great joy to know that I am improving the community in which that I inhabit and has been a part of, both as a performing artist and a professional for a long time. And I think community is another thing I just said. Community is so important. And I think that I am so indebted to all of the individuals who have come before me and paved the way so that I can be standing here talking about these like lofty dreams and goals. And what I also recognize is that for a long time, performing arts, physical therapy, at least like in the city that I live, has been pretty siloed. And by that, I just mean like there have been all these incredible practitioners, but there hasn't been as much cross collaboration and pollination. And one thing that I have really tried to create, which I think in some way helps to balance things, is to recreate community within my generation of performing arts, and community in like a myriad of ways. Part of that is making sure that as clinicians, we all know each other. We have continuing education that we host at my clinic, where we invite other performing arts PTs from the area to come in. And those have been really well attended, and I've met some incredible individuals. And that way we can a lot of those people are taking care of the folks that I see who are injured on workers' compensation claims. They're taking care of those folks backstage, so that when they go back to their show, I'm able to be like, hey, so-and-so, just want you to know this person's coming back, here's what's up. And that creates a better community for our performers. Some of those folks we collaborate with. We also create a community for our performing artists, in so much as a lot of friends and friends of friends know each other within our space, which I understand can be an intimidating place to heal in, and it's not for everyone. But we also have strength and conditioning sessions for folks who are injured to kind of get back in the show. And so we've intentionally, unintentionally created this community where folks can heal together and kind of get prepared together. So it shows up in a bunch of ways. There's more than enough to go around. We end up being stronger together for each other. We can learn from each other, and we can create a better community for our performing artists.
If someone was listening right now, someone within the profession of rehabilitation, whatever that might be, and they wanted to work with performing artists, they wanted to do something similar to what you're doing, what would some suggestions be? Either a couple, I'll give you a couple different scenarios. A student who's still, hasn't graduated yet, or someone who's been in rehab, wherever that is, and is now looking from the outside in saying, well, how do I get into this? What would be a first step or two that you'd suggest?
That's hard. I think for new grads, or people who are aspiring to come into performing arts PT, it's really challenging. It's really challenging, and you need to. It's my personal opinion, obviously, but I think it is to everyone's benefit if the person who is entering into working with performing artists has had some time to develop pattern recognition and really efficient manual skills and clinical reasoning skills, because you're often the first point of medical contact if you're with someone backstage, and you need to be prepared to make some really challenging conversations and get your emotions kind of out of the picture, right? So I think that I know people who want to work with performing arts, I really want to work with performing arts, but I would say give yourself a beat and go get some reps in, maybe study for your OCS for a hot sec, because for me, that really helped bring a lot of things together. And make sure that you're ready to handle it. That's one. I think two, learn dance culture a little bit, or performing arts culture. Performing arts culture is different in every space, and it's so important to be able to kind of put your finger on the pulse of the community that you're walking into. Broadway is different than modern dance, is different than ballet, is different than puppetry. And I'm not saying you have to be an expert in every single one, but kind of understanding what that looks like, even if you don't understand what the codified steps are, that's fine. You can learn. Very important. And I think for folks who have put in the reps and are ready to kind of dip their toes in, there's per diem opportunities for performing. Again, I'm speaking to my city. I can't speak to what's happening outside, but at least in New York City, there are opportunities for clinicians to come in and help with some backstage coverage to get your feet wet, which could also lead to a job eventually, or more than a per diem job, a more permanent job.
All right, real talk for a second. If you're a physical therapist or running a clinic, you already wear 50 hats a day. Clinician, manager, scheduler, part-time tech support. I see you. But what if you had a sidekick that could help you do all of that? Something smarter. That's where Empower EMR by MW Therapy comes in. It's built just for physical therapists, and it's loaded with smart automations and AI that help you grow your practice without burning out. No more chasing paper trails or fighting outdated systems. This thing handles billing, scheduling, documentation, patient engagement, all in one clean, customizable platform. The best part? It's actually affordable and scales as you grow. Clinics everywhere are loving it, and if you're ready to take the stress off your plate and be the hero of your practice again, check out a free demo at mwtherapy.com. Yeah. Where can people find information about your business? I wanted to make sure you gave out that link and people can take a look at what you're doing.
I appreciate that. www.flyspacenyc.com.
Perfect.
Yeah, you can go to flyspacenyc.com.
Yeah. Is there anything I didn't ask that you maybe thought like, hey, I hope I get a chance to talk about this, or when you talk with other people who do something similar to what you do that comes up? Is there anything I didn't get a chance to ask?
We talked about, my biggest points are like the proactive injury management and then community building and using each other's resources and lifting each other up. I think that's the soapbox I've been on recently.
And those two things that you just said are very simple to say, not
Yeah.
necessarily easy to do.
No, sir.
So how hard could it be? It's just get a bunch of people to think forward and invest in something that hopefully will pay dividends in the end. But
Sure.
if you do invest in it, the chances are you don't see it. So it's
Right.
a lot like selling something like insurance where you hope the person never has to use it. Or
Sure.
if it's there, you don't see it.
Yeah.
And creating community. How hard could it be? Well, these are humans doing humany things.
Sure.
And understanding those people and trying to facilitate that is very simple to say,
Yes.
but not necessarily easy to execute on.
I could not agree more. And one thing I will say is like, I feel like I used to be, and I'm conditioning myself out of being one of those people who's like, yeah, we're just going to break the internet. We're going to like make one post and everything's going to happen, or we're going to have one interaction and things are going to just change. And it's absolutely not. I'm sitting here talking about like shouting to the abyss and obviously making plans. Like these are things I expect to see in like 5, 10, 15, 20 years, right? And we're planting the seeds now and sowing it and watching things grow slowly.
Sure.
But I'm very passionate about it, have been for a long time, and I'm here for it.
Yeah, good things happen that way. Marissa, last thing we do on each episode is called the parting shot.
Oh yeah. Okay, well, first of all, like I am drinking a tea.
Oh yeah, I've got an espresso because we are recording at 10 o'clock in the morning.
Correct. So there's no alcohol involved in this situation right now. But what was it? What are my parting words?
Yeah, parting shot. What would you want to leave with the audience?
Yeah. I think I want to go back to this idea of community. I think it's really easy to judge a person or an interaction by the information that you have in the moment. And it's never as easy as that. And I think we do ourselves a disservice if we don't do the work to get more information and kind of invest in people and relationships and things without all the data first, which is kind of like tangentially related to where the name FlySpace came from. FlySpace is my business and my physical therapy company. We were thinking about, and by we, I mean me, I was thinking about being something like on stage PT or stage left PT or, something like that, off stage PT, whatever. But then a friend of mine mentioned, he was like, what about FlySpace? And I was like, well, first of all, what's FlySpace? And the FlySpace is the area above the proscenium stage. Proscenium is like most theater that we see, right? With the curtain and the stage, yeah, and the audience is sitting out front. The FlySpace is the area above the proscenium stage where flying set pieces and actors are hung. And when he said that, I was like, that's really brilliant. And it's brilliant because my philosophy has always been, if you stand far enough away, or in this case up, you can start to see all of the players, right? And so you're not just seeing them from stage right, where like, I'm missing a big chunk, but I'm seeing them from above in the context of their surroundings with all the players, right? So I start to actually understand what's going on and can put them in context. So how is that?
Pretty damn good.
Okay, thanks.
Marissa Schaefer from FlySpace. Thanks so much for taking the time and talking with us today. We appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Let's be real. You didn't become a therapist to be average. You've got something in you that wants more mastery, more impact, more confidence in the clinic. That's exactly what Brooks Institute of Higher Learning delivers. Their residency and fellowship programs aren't just resume builders, they're transformation zones. You get one-on-one mentoring, deep dive classwork, labs, and real-time experience inside one of the most advanced rehab systems in the country. And the best part? You're not grinding this out on the side. You get a full salary and benefits while you train with the best. Whether it's ortho, neuro, peds, geriatrics, women's health, Brooks IHL helps you become the expert you know you're meant to be. Check out brooksihl.org to learn more and take that next step.